Final hour overdrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Brian Hayes, Jamie Noodles, McLennan. We got Bruce Boudreau coming up here momentarily. Our best bets later in the hour. Leafs Preds tonight. Joseph Woll against UC Soros in net tonight. Soros plays basically every single game, so that's not a surprise. But
yeah,
Joseph Woll going tonight. Again, I don't think a surprise when you consider they are a tandem. They're both playing very well. And, yeah, Stolarz played well the other night.
Played fantastic the other night, but so did Woll.
Woll played
very
great
well in Tampa.
The game before, exactly. And Tampa was spectacular.
And this isn't, Stolarz isn't the clear-cut number one. In Nashville, you know who the clear-cut number one. He plays every night. They just traded their backup to Colorado.
Mm-hmm. And he went in and won a game.
Won a game in Buffalo for good for him. But they traded for Noonan, the young goaltender from Colorado. I thought to myself, well, maybe they throw him in a tough start here, like tonight. Maybe just throw.
That's being thrown to the wolves, man.
I know, but we've seen that before. Mrazek didn't play the other night. It was the other kid, Bloomquist or whatever. I have seen a scenario where see what the young kid can do. Maybe it doesn't overwhelm them. Maybe they don't know the pressure. They just kind of go and play. We've seen it a few times against Toronto, but. I think Nashville trained to get back into it. They've lost 3 games in a row in overtime.
Yeah, they keep giving up points.
Right, they're giving up points, but Saros is their only hope to get out of it. So you're going to have to ride him right into the ground.
Yeah, he's going to play even more down the stretch. There's no load management because of how poorly they've played until it gets to a point where they're out. Right. That could happen where they're game 60 and they're 20 points out and there's no point in doing it anymore.
Right.
You have to start thinking about the future.
You're only 24 games in.
Yeah, you have to continue to push forward.
24 games and then see where
But Stamkos in town, a local guy, obviously a Leaf killer in the past. I've made predictions on who was going to score the last couple of days. I'm leaning Stamkos tonight.
Really?
I'm leaning a Stamkos goal tonight. Because it just feels appropriate. It was like Patrick Laine last night, Matthews the night before. These are superstar players. And Stamkos, he's had an up-and-down season like everyone else. Jonathan Marchessault's the other stud that joined them this offseason that really has not looked comfortable. They have not put up very good points.
Right.
But, Stamkos, I expect him to be dancing a bit tonight.
To have some jam.
I'm going to go on the record and say Stamkos scores tonight.
Really?
That's my guy. That's my pick. I think the Leafs are going to win this game because, again, I think they'll actually bounce back on how they played the other night. Jake McCabe not going again tonight, though. That's a hit. McCabe and Tanev have been such an effective pairing, and McCabe is not ready to play. And I think that's smart. And, again, it's the luxury of being in the position you're in with the Leafs. They've racked up so many points. There's no reason to rush him back. Yeah. Max Domi probably could play tonight. What's the point? Max Pacioretty's closing in. He's speaking with the media today. He could return this weekend. What's the point? You don't rush him back tonight. You don't have to.
Well, and you give a couple more days. That's the other thing is you've got back-to-back this weekend. It is a busy week, regardless of opponent, because you go Chicago, Nashville. What are we doing this weekend? I can't remember.
It's Washington Friday at Pittsburgh Saturday.
Right. So Washington's
so
insanely
legit, so legit.
I was looking at it today. I'm like, are they in 4th place in the league?
The 3 teams in the Metro. Washington's leading the Metro, which is crazy considering Jersey's played so many games and racked up so many points. Washington has 36 points. New Jersey has 36. Carolina's got 33. The Leafs in Florida have been really good this year. They have 32.
Yeah.
The Leafs are 4th place in the conference. And all those teams in the Metro are playing like rock stars, and Washington continues to do it. And they got a plus 31 goal differential.
And Minnesota and Winnipeg are the only team. Oh, Vegas is in there too, I guess.
Yeah, but Washington has the best goal differential in the league at plus 31.
Yeah,
plus 31, the best goal differential in the league, which generally is an indicator of how well you're playing and how dominant you are in individual games.
And they made some nice moves in the offseason, kind of under, Logan Thompson, who's played very well for them, Jacob Chikrin for Nick Jensen,
PLD's been good. Pierre-Luc Dubois, got to give him credit.
Mangiapane.
Yep.
And there's another, Strome. Would that be a snub?
I think Strome and Thompson could be considered a snub. Again, as I said earlier, I don't think any of these goalies can be considered a snub when we're dealing with their
Right.
profiles as players.
Right,
These are not Vezina caliber goalies. These are not guys that are going to the Hall of Fame. They're good goalies. They're good starters in the league. But whether it's Montembeault or Thompson or Skinner or Talbot or whatever, I don't think it's necessarily a snub. But Thompson's played very, very well.
Yeah.
And Dylan Strome has as well. Strome played up to a caliber that should have put him on the radar for this Canadian team.
Yes.
I don't know if he skates well enough at the international level for them to put him on. He wouldn't play further up the lineup. He's doing this in Washington. He's playing a ton of minutes. He wouldn't do that for Canada.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Can he play this role in a fourth line? I'm not sure.
That's true.
Joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline, here's a man that's very familiar with what's going on down in Washington. Here's Bruce Boudreau. How you doing, Bruce?
I'm doing well. Just getting into listening to you guys.
Yes.
Talk about the Canucks.
Yeah. Well, Dylan Strome, I mean, is he a Canadian snub? He's not going to make the team, but how close do you think he was to actually putting himself on that radar?
Well, first of all, you know what? I hate the word snub because snub sounds like you're really not that. No, we all use it, but ignoring it. Dylan Strome has been great this year. Like the last two games that they won before the shootout loss, they were down going into the third. He's become a really good leader. He'd score the first goal, and he plays hard, and he can play all the positions, and would be a good 13th forward. I really believe it. He has been their leader of one of the best teams in the NHL this year. And when you need something done, Dylan Strome is the guy that's getting it done. So, he's probably not going to make it. But, boy, I think if he was put on the team, it wouldn't be a bad call.
From all of the stuff that's been leaked out by the insiders and stuff, there's a framework of what people believe the team is going to look like for Team Canada. A guy like Seth Jarvis, Brandon Hagel, Anthony Cirelli, Sam Bennett. Those are names that are fantastic players. Did anybody, from what you believe or seen, jump off the page for you, either good, I wouldn't say bad, but just surprising?
Well, I think, if anything, Hagel's growth as an offensive player, even though he got 20-some goals with Chicago before he was traded, I think he's turned into somebody that John Cooper uses in every situation and is really somebody that he, even if he was picked, he would use him a lot. And I keep recalling in the last Olympics, Babcock's fourth line was Getzlaf, Perry, and Jamie Benn. And by the end of the Olympic tournament, they were playing 17, 18 minutes a night. And, that's the kind of guy Hagel would be, or a Cirelli. One of those two. I just keep thinking that Tampa is going to listen to John Cooper and let him have one guy that he wants that maybe they wouldn't choose. And I just feel that one of these two guys are going to be on. But it's usually, if you're 12th or 11th, 10th or 13th, it's going to be a centerman because he can usually play all the positions, and sometimes wingers can't do that.
With Bruce Boudreau, and as you take a look at the way Canada is building this team, historically it's always been the other nations that had to match what we brought to the table as Canadians. It was the Americans, the Finns, the Swedes, the Russians. It's like, all right, that's the pace car. Can we build anything that can compete with them? You get the impression that it's shifting a little bit to the point where the Canadian management actually had to consider what the Americans are going to build and how they may compete with them. And if so, what does that say about what this rivalry could become?
Well, it obviously could be a great rivalry. The guys that we're all talking about are pretty young in as far as international play, both on the American team and the Canadian team, except for maybe Crosby and Marchand. But I think you're right there, too, because, I worry that when I keep looking at the lineups and I look at the Canadian defense, and, they've got the Bouchards on it and Makars and Theodore's, all, they're great offensive players, but I keep thinking of the Stanley Cup playoffs and what wins it is big, strong defense. And, the American forwards, some of them are pretty big and are going to go to the front of the net. And can guys like this and the Dobsons, if he's picked, can they move guys out in front of the net when it's going to get pretty nasty in front? So I think sometimes the Canadians might be looking for somebody else. Like, I mean, they're looking at Peter Angelo. He'd be one of the bigger defensemen that the Canadians have. So I agree with you, or I think like that the Canadians are looking at what the Americans have and maybe choosing instead of like 7 really good offensive defensemen that Canada can bring to the table, bring in some tough guys. That's maybe why Canada's name has been mentioned as a shutdown guy and a guy that can move guys out in front and block shots. Those are the kind of things that I think Canada might be looking for rather than just run-and-gun type guys, because they got enough of them.
Bruce, what do you make of the goaltending picks or potential picks? Everybody's been obviously talking about Team Canada, whereas compared to the other countries, there's we'll call them a lot more established, maybe number ones, even though I'm defensive of the Canadian goaltenders because they've won cups, right? They are guys that have been there and done that at the biggest level. But what do you make of that? And what do you think when you just talked about that defensive core, what do you need to see from the goaltending for things to be very solid or at least comfortable in your eyes?
Well, you know what? For 30 years as a coach, I said I knew nothing about goaltending, and I still don't, I think. Like, I mean, there's been goaltenders that haven't jumped out at you. When you guys were talking before I was on the air, like, none of them are going to be Hall of Famers, and who can be the hottest guy at the right time and maybe in front of a good team. Bennington can be that guy because he has done it and won the cup when he's done it. But I do think Logan Thompson, watching him, he has been splendid for the Caps this year. I don't know if this is answering your question at all, because there's a lot of Canadian goalies that are just sort of in that, well, they're pretty good goaltending, but they're not the guys that jump out at you like a Shesterkin would or a Vasilevsky would, even though neither one of them are in the tournament. But so I don't know what they're looking for in the goaltenders, other than I hope it's a bigger guy, because if the Canadians do go with the offensive smallest defenseman, they're going to need a goalie that is big and not too small in the net, and he makes himself big on a lot of the plays. I think that's my inaccurate thought process.
Okay, I like that. That's accurate. That's an accurate thought process.
Yep.
With Bruce Boudreau. And when you think of the players that have the most at stake here, I think of guys in their prime that haven't had an opportunity to play best on best. The McDavids, the McKinnons, Matthews. But then also you look at Toronto, and Matthews, Marner, and Nylander are all going to be a part of this. And they have the reputations in the biggest moments based on what they've done in the playoffs, and we all know their history, and that's on them. And they're going to have an opportunity to change it again this year. But before they get there, Bruce, they're going to play in this tournament. They're all going to play on 3 different teams. One of them's likely to win, because I don't think Finland's going to win this. How big of an opportunity do you think this is for the Marner, Matthews, Nylander individual camps to have a big platform tournament and maybe get people thinking, okay, that could be something we see come the spring?
Well, I mean, individually, I think whichever one of those guys wins it will be able to come back to the dressing room in Toronto and say, you know what, guys, this is what it took for us to win. And they'll be able to speak from experience. And the other thing they will know is they will know how good it feels to win. Like, I mean, they haven't. None of them have reached that peak yet, where they just realize that, you know what, this is better than any feeling in the world, is just winning. And I think they're going to be able to bring that back to the dressing room. And I'm pretty sure one of them will. Which one it will be, I mean, is yet to be seen. But, I mean, that's the thing I think they're going to be able to bring back to the dressing room. I mean, I don't think there's going to be, for the first day, there might be some kibitzing about it. Oh, we beat you, this and that. But I think the overall feeling when push comes to shove and they're in the middle of the playoffs and this is going to be the line that one guy is going to be able to bring back and say how great it is. Boys, if we just win this game or win this series, we're going to be on top of the world. And I think that's going to be an important factor when it comes to the Leafs, who haven't done it in so long.
Yeah. One of them's going to have bragging rights. Although maybe it'll be Finland and Yanni Hakanpää. You never know.
Yeah, well, there's
maybe Yanni will be out there.
Hakanpää might be the guy who brings it
If
home.
Finland wins it and Yanni Hakanpää comes peacocking into the room, that'll be quite a story. But yeah, Leafs.
And he won't play in the top 6 in Toronto.
Right, exactly.
He's won the 4 nations. Yeah,
it's possible. It's on his radar. Leafs Preds tonight. In terms of Craig Berube and the impact you've seen him have on this team through 25 games, is there one thing in particular you would pinpoint and say that is something Craig Berube has nailed early into his tenure here?
Well, the importance of defense and not the importance of offense, I think, to me, is what Craig's brought to the table. And I've said this a few times, that we've had conversations in the summer about that's the way they did it in St. Louis, and they won the cup. And one of the things he's told me is, he says, we might not have as many points as the Leafs have had in the past, but we're going to be better prepared for the playoffs. And boy, I watch them with those words in every night when I'm watching them, and boy, they play solid defense, and their goaltending is underrated, and it's good. And so, I mean, they're already right now, to me, prepared as one of the better defensive teams in the league, and they bought into this thing. You don't see 3 guys hanging at the far blue line when the puck's behind the circles in their own zone anymore. And, I mean, they take great pride in their defense, and it shows up every night. And if they get 2 goals scored more scored on them, you can almost see that they're disappointed. Their goal is 2 goals or less every night, and it's fun to watch when you see players listening and buying into what the coach is selling, because the coach is usually selling a pretty good message, but you got to buy into it. However Craig approaches this message, it's really working.
Did you see, some of the chaos in the league? I mean, did you see the firing of Jim Montgomery coming? Stuff like that, where there's lots of pressure on the New York Rangers. They've kind of hit the ditch recently. There seems like outside of, in Toronto, things have been going very good, but there's some other markets that seem to be really struggling with some consistency or some of the things that are going on. I mean, what catches your eye recently?
Well, if there's one thing I know, I might not know much about hockey, but I can tell if the coach is going to get fired.
You can sniff that one out, Bruce? You know what's coming?
I can sniff that one out when it's coming. I've had it happen to me too many times. But you know what? I think the big thing about the league is that there's like in hockey, there's 16 teams that don't make the playoffs, and that means like half the league is out of the playoffs. So it's really, I find watching it difficult to get, like teams that are supposedly like the Rangers. Okay, like I mean, if everybody's getting a little bit loud about them right now because they're not playing so well, but now the next thing you know, they'll play the Montreals and they'll play a couple of the bottom teams. They'll win and everything will be better again. I mean, Pittsburgh's just gone through it, even though they beat a good Florida team the other night. But you don't play enough. Like only Winnipeg I've seen right now has gone through a real tough schedule where, boy, every team they played on that road trip seemed to be tough. And so, I mean, they fell back a few notches. But, I mean, usually there's a couple teams in there that are fairly, if you've got a 5-game road trip, you're playing 3 tough teams and 2 teams you should beat. So it makes it a little bit tougher to get into that 5, 6, 7 losses in a row tailspin. And then once you win a game, it becomes less vocal. You don't hear as much until you lose another game. And, I mean, we're not hearing that in Toronto this year, which is great. A lot of years we have. So it's tough to think, but, I mean, I think there's enough wiggle room. Let the bad teams even win good games or win games, because the league has got a lot of the haves and the have-nots, if you ask me.
Well, Winnipeg's a pretty classic example of how if you make a quality first impression and you bank a bunch of wins and points, no one will point to you when you start to kind of hit a bit of a storm, because they're in one right now.
Yeah, they've lost 4 in a row.
3-7 in the last 10. I mean, they were 15-1. They're now 18-8. Minnesota's passed them in the standings, and yet.
But that's what. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I mean.
That's why you coaches talk about banking these points right at the beginning of the season to get as many games above 500 that every team is going to go through at least one little tailspin. So I mean, if you can bank as many points as you can, and you go through this, Winnipeg is going to be fine. They're going to start to get better, get back to where they were, because I just think they're a really good team. But I mean, the goal to me is to get to be 13 games above 500 as quick as you can, because if you get to 13 games above 500, you only have to play 500 for the rest of the year, and you're pretty well assured of making the playoffs. And I think that's what I used to tell the boys anyway. I mean, you look at it, the 55 games to go, and there's if Minnesota plays 500 hockey, they're in, and they weren't in last year. So it's a pretty. It makes you feel better as a team at that point when you're going through it, if you ever go through a downspin.
Absolutely. All right, Bruce. Well, we'll see what comes out of the game tonight and the Four Nations face-offs. All the rosters will be out within the next hour and a half, and I'm sure we'll break it down with you again soon. We appreciate you doing this.
No problem. Looking forward to seeing who Canada chose.
Yes, absolutely. There he is, Bruce Boudreau, our TSN hockey analyst, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Yeah, I think we have a pretty good read on the Canadian team, but it sounds as if the American team is starting to trickle out a little bit.
Oh, yeah?
And
any
again,
surprises for you?
Well, I mean, Vincent Trocheck, Chris Kreider, Brock Nelson, sounds like the three of them have made the team. Again,
that doesn't surprise me. Kreider,
does Nelson surprise you? Brock Nelson over, again, like, it depends on what you're trying to build. It's just like the Canadian team. Like, Nelson's a good player. He's a guy. He's like a utility type player.
But who didn't make it? That's my question.
Well, I mean, again, Cole Caulfield not on the team. Tage Thompson not on the team.
Different players, though. That's you're right. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
An all-star team. It's more like Nelson's a two-way player. That's he can score, but he's also responsible. He's big and strong. You're talking about big forwards, and that Kreider's a big forward. Trocheck's a pain in the ass to play against. Gets underneath your skin.
Really good player. So big game performer.
If you're asking me, Cole Caulfield or those three players, I probably at this stage of their career, those other three serve a purpose.
I agree. I agree. If you just look at him, I mean, I'd have to come up with a longer list of American players.
Well, yeah, I want to see
would be on the brink.
Would be the, what Brucey doesn't like.
Like snub,
which is fair.
Yeah.
We got to find omission. Omission could be the word.
Yeah.
You find the right omission, but the U.S. team. You said like hasn't been like this in many years, but now you're going to see some pretty quality, like great players get left off this roster. That's how deep they are.
Absolutely. Yeah, Tage Thompson's a guy. Alex Tuch's a guy that because he's a big guy, physical, good skater. It looks like the U.S. defense, Quinn Hughes will be there, McAvoy, Fox, Werenski, Slavin, Faber, Hannafin. There's like a couple of American defensemen you can point to too, and wonder, okay, was that guy going to be on the team, roster, whatever? They're loaded, man.
Yeah, they're deep.
Like they're a good team, and their goalies, I think, are Hellebuck, Ottinger, and Swayman.
Yeah.
Do you think Hellebuck starts every game, or do you think they'd mix in Ottinger? Who would be the number two? Ottinger or Swayman?
Both have had, like Ottinger has had these playoffs where he just absolutely stood on his head against Calgary. Remember, he almost stole Game 7. Johnny Gaudreau scored short side shelf in overtime.
Right.
In Game 7, where Ottinger was brilliant. I mean,
that was a few years ago now.
Yeah, it's been a minute. But, I mean, Ottinger wasn't the problem against Edmonton last year. Like, he played well. I didn't think he was, I think he's a really good goaltender. Swayman, take it for what it's worth. I mean, he's looked pretty good in the playoffs.
Yeah.
He hasn't had as strong a season, though, right? Like, Swayman had the late start to the season. Ottinger's kind of, Dallas is where they are. And now Boston's fought back. Like,
yeah,
if you just looked at where Boston was in the standings, you would have no idea they've had
fired a coach,
and had
people
like some
losing
up and
their minds.
Yeah, like they're third in the Atlantic type of thing, hanging around there. But like, I guess my point being is that would be a coin toss. It's Hellebuck and then those two, but I could make a case for either one of them. Ottinger's a really I mean, they're both fantastic.
Yeah,
players.
and like Hellebuck's a
Yeah.
standalone guy. It just you've got, if Russia were in the tournament, if they're going to be in the Olympic Games, the same thing's going to be there for them. Like, would it be Shesterkin? Will he play every game, or will they go with Vasilevsky?
Depends. Like, here's the other thing. Here's something crazy. Winnipeg's lost 4 in a row. Like, what if at that time, let's just fast forward 2 months and Winnipeg has lost, 7 of 10, like they have right now.
Yep.
That looks different heading into a tournament, right? Where Hellebuck, they're 15-1, and he's,
Yeah, you don't think twice about it. It doesn't matter who else is on the team.
2 months from now, what does this look like? Swayman might have pushed Boston into somewhere.
Yep.
Or, Ottinger and Dallas continue to go where it's like, hey, we got to look at all of these guys, not just the guy that we named the number one type of thing. So I think all three are capable. And that's going to go for every team based on 2 months from now, like what they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, and I think specifically with that position,
right?
Like if you get a Dominic Hasek type scenario, and none of these guys would be at that level, but he got there in '98 and he was unbeatable.
Yeah,
you couldn't score on the guy.
No, he was ridiculous.
He was just there was nothing you could do. They were going to win the gold medal. And the same thing could apply here.
Exactly.
Like some guy gets hot for any of these teams. Let's say UC Soros gets on a heater, gets into the Four Nations faceoff, stands on his head. Finn's probably going to win or have a real opportunity to win.
But I mean, even the Swedish goaltenders are all really good. So they get on a heater. Like it'll be interesting to see who they lean to start, and then say, hey, we've got to find a game for this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be the case. Ullmark, Markstrom, Gustafsson. Gustafsson is leading the league, I believe, statistically. If it's not, it's Stolarz, but Gustafsson's played a little bit more. But he's been goals
He's
against
been unreal.
He's been unbelievable.
Unreal in Minnesota.
But personally, he has the least amount of cachet on that list.
Ullmark and Markstrom.
Ullmark's won a Vezina, and Markstrom, to me, is an absolute rock star of a goal.
And he's had a great year, too.
Yeah, and he's actually, I don't know if Markstrom's been up for a Vezina.
He's
won
been
it.
nominated, never won it.
Right.
But Gustafsson, I think you could argue, has been the best goalie in the league this year. Him and Hellebuck.
Yeah, I think him and Hellebuck. It was Hellebuck early on. Now
recently
other guys have jumped into the conversation.
Yeah.
But
that's an embarrassment of riches. Again, it could be Markstrom, it could be Gustafsson. They're having a very different conversation in Sweden than we are here. Yet, again, in Canada, on defense and certainly up front, as we established a couple of hours ago, a lot of these teams would do anything
to have that.
To have the opportunities that Canada has and the manager has for Team Canada when putting together a roster.
Right.
Where you're going to see certain guys. And there's also an adjustment here because it's been so long since we've had best on best, where there's just a different generation of player that, if you're obsessed with your club team, if you're it's very parochial vision, like, okay, all Leafs all the time, I'm from Toronto, all Montreal all the time, I'm from Montreal, Edmonton, whatever. You understand what, like Sam Reinhart, for an example, has been doing. Cup winner, scored a lot of goals. This guy could be the best goal scorer in the game right now. He's right there.
Right.
He is now the guy that, name a player 10 years ago, you'd be like, well, that guy is going to be unbelievable. You just have to adjust your viewpoint because we haven't seen it.
Yeah.
International hockey.
Yeah.
Braden Point. These are great players that because we haven't had best on best in almost a decade, they haven't been able to show it on the international level.
Right.
But they are ready to rock.
And quite honestly, like you just mentioned, a lot of people just focus on their club team, the team they cheer for. So you see Braden Point 4 times a year, 6 points a year, whenever they play Montreal, the Leafs, Edmonton, whatever. Like you see those particular players, and if they don't have a great night, you're like, nah,
he's an okay player, I get it,
or whatever. But you're like, geez, why didn't my guy make it?
Exactly.
Like there's a lot of noise about Tavares, potentially being omitted, we'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but there's other guys or other fan bases going, why isn't my guy, like my Tavares from my team, going, hey, he should be there? What's going on?
Absolutely.
That's the noise and the beauty of fandom. But when you see it on the biggest stage, you're going, well, Reinhart, geez, that's a nice
watch
player.
that guy.
Yeah, watch this guy.
And watch who he's going to play with. Put him with McDavid or McKinnon or something like that and look out.
Right.
And there's a long list of those type of players. Leaf spreads tonight. We'll get to our best bets brought to you by FanDuel. Obviously, we're tracking the Juan Soto stuff. It feels like it's going to be coming soon. Like, it feels like it's getting a little bit louder in terms of him possibly telling teams that they're out.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to New York. And I think John Heyman of MLB Network reporting it feels like Steve Cohen, the owner of the Mets, will pay him basically anything to get him. And it feels like the Yankees are right there, like, as well. You know, and again, if you're a Blue Jay fan, a Sox fan, or whatever, I think you're holding out hope, but it doesn't seem overly likely. But we'll see what comes of it. Hopefully later this week, if not into next week. Winter meetings right around the corner. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Leaf spreads tonight. Best bets later in the hour on that game. The USA roster has now been announced officially. And we can tell you that Auston Matthews made the team.
Yeah,
not sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
And Doogie wondering if Matthews will be named the captain of this team. Mike Sullivan, the head coach. There isn't really a grizzled veteran on this team. This is a new wave of Americans. I mean, Kreider's a veteran.
How old is Kreider?
Kreider's 30-something. And
Larkin, late 20s?
Larkin's late 20s, and, you know, he's captain in Detroit. Vinny Trocheck would be 30, early 30s. But this is the era of Matthews and Hughes and Eichel and the Tkachuk brothers. They're all on the team. Kyle Connor's on the team. I would guess it's Auston Matthews, Quinn Hughes, or Matthew Tkachuk. That would be my assumption. Two of them are captains, Quinn in Vancouver, Austin here, and Matthew Tkachuk, I think, would have been the captain if he got there before Barkov.
So here's something for Joe from the Bridge. Tomorrow, can we build a board with Canada and U.S. side by side?
And do you want to do what I love to do? Pick your poison, who would make the team and who wouldn't?
No.
You're mashing the two together.
No, I'm not mashing.
I'll mash.
I like to go.
I'll mash tomorrow.
Head to head and go. I'm sorry, just off the top of.
Okay, look at that and you tell me what I think you're about to tell me. You think the Americans are better?
Yes.
I don't.
I think the top of Canadian is better, but I think there's more depth there. Like, define depth. You're right. Like, I
don't know, man. I mean, listen, put it this way. If we're looking at the board right now, and if you're listening on radio, podcast, or whatever, you don't see this. Up the middle of the ice for the Americans, Matthews, Eichel, Hughes, Larkin. That's what we assume.
Right.
If it's McDavid, McKinnon, Crosby, Cirelli, I'm taking Canada all day.
100%.
All day up the middle of the ice.
But I think they're going to have to push some of those guys to the wing because I think the wingers are stronger for the U.S.
I think so. But if it's, again, looking at this board, and that doesn't mean this is how Sullivan's going to play it out. Trocheck, Kreider, Boldy, Connor. I think Canada matches that with the likes of Stone and Konechny and Hagel and Bennett if he plays on the left side.
40 goals.
Connor's a stud.
So
Connor's
that's
a stud.
talking third line.
Okay, but Boldy, Trocheck, Kreider, Nelson. I'm taking the depth of the Canadians over those four.
But Nelson's not I don't know. That's why I want them side by side because it's harder to to look at it. It's close. But it's not like it used to be slam dunk. I feel like Canada and the
yes,
US,
it used to be.
I just feel like that is differently balanced than the Canadian one, where it's like, okay, you're like there's no debating down the middle of the ice if you line it up that way. In Canada wins like that. That is just a 4-pack that is unmatched.
Yes,
sorry, it's just I just believe that they might have to go. You know, McKinnon might have to push to the wing just because you on the left side, like we're talking Marchand, who else?
Reinhardt, if he plays his offside.
There we go.
Hagel, Bennett,
like Konechny, like Stone, like it's just different. I guess that's what the word is different. And it's no slight. I think they're both amazing. Everybody deserves to be there. It's just I look at that U.S., they're just a little bit different balance.
Yeah.
They might be going, hey, we're thinking more, for lack of better words, all-star team where Brandon Hagel, Point, and Stone, if that is your third line and that's going to be a checking line, or the fourth line, Bennett, Cirelli, Konechny, those guys are going to be a pain to play against.
Well, exactly. And all capable of putting up numbers. But again, Point's a 50-goal scorer in this league.
You're right.
So you're going to look at Kyle Connor. I mean, Point's going to knock that off all day. Now, Hughes, if he's on the third line, obviously that's a superstar as well. There's superstars on both teams.
You know what?
I think the imbalance is more possibly on certainly in net. That goes without saying.
Yeah,
the Americans have them
throw
beat.
that out.
It's over. There's no
Yeah, throw that
conversation. It's done. On the point is where it gets interesting. But McAvoy has not had a great year. Fox has not had a great year based on his standards.
Right.
And, you know, I like Slavin's a really good defenseman. Werenski's had a good year. He's a good player when he's healthy.
Makar's the best player out of all.
But that's the point, is Makar is the best player of them all.
Right.
And I'm still, you know, I'm putting like Theodore, Pietrangelo, Morrissey, like those, that's a very capable defense corps. Very capable defense corps. I think the defense is pretty close because of as good as Quinn Hughes is, and he is a superstar.
Right.
I think Makar's better than him.
Yeah.
And I think Makar can have more of an impact on this, although I think Quinn will be phenomenal in a series like this too. You put him with great players, the way he kind of plays rover out there and how balanced he is and how cool, calm, and collected he is.
Right.
Like Makar's just go, go, go. You're on your heels, look out. Hughes is such a cerebral. He has the ability to slow a game down. He's like him with great players will be fun to watch.
I just think they're different. That's what it is. It's like
I'm still on Canada because of the high end talent.
Well, I mean, the three best players are Canadian. In my opinion, I'm sorry.
I agree. McDavid, McKinnon, and Makar are the three best players.
So that should probably.
I'd have Matthews at 4.
They would put you at over the top right there.
Yeah.
And I just. Like, that's why I hesitated. I was like, okay, I need you to change my mind, or what am I
that would be
here?
where I would start, is that McDavid, McKinnon, and Makar, for me, because you can look at the depth of both sides. You can look at the depth, and maybe you'd argue the Americans a little bit deeper here, a little bit deeper there. That I'm not going to fight you on that. But if you give me McDavid, McKinnon, Makar in their prime, the three best players are on the Canadian team.
And then work around that.
And you work around that. And if you get into a third period where it's tight, Makar's going to basically double shift, and you could almost have McDavid and McKinnon on every shift.
Well, they're playing together. You slide, you go McDavid, McKinnon,
Reinhardt or something like that.
Or Marner, McDavid, and McKinnon over on the left side. Like you could mix and match. Like I feel like that's why I wanted them side by side, and you're going.
We'll get that. We'll get that for you by tomorrow.
But
Don't you worry about it.
You're 100% right. It's just I'm looking at that U.S. roster, and I don't. Not that imbalance is the wrong word. It just Canada's looks different, but there's no doubt that the three best players are Canadian, in my opinion, as well. So outside of the goaltending, I think they match up really nicely.
Well, and also the amount of winning on the Canadian side is pretty substantial with their high-end players. McKinnon and Crosby and Reinhardt and Makar's won, and Taves has won, and Theodore and Pietrangelo have won.
2 goalies.
Goalies have won.
Yeah, like it. You're right. Like it may lean on experience. Those are the guys. I'm fascinated to see how it'll unfold, because it seems like the USA went like a little different philosophy compared to what Canada was doing, philosophy-wise. Mm-hmm. Because if you're just looking at, just goal scorers or whatever, like to me, Canada's trying to make it fit, where USA's going, we're going with some great players here. But that being said, Cole Caulfield has 16 goals. That he's on the outside.
Caulfield's not there. Tage Thompson not there. There's I'm sure a list we could come up with, a long list of good players that are on the team. But I think it's, again, you're looking at a new wave on both sides, which sticks out to me, is that it's been so long since we've had international hockey best on best, that now it's Matthews, it's Jack Hughes, it's the Tkachuk brothers, it's McDavid, it's McKinnon, it's Makar. This is the new wave, and the faces of each program are different, and there are going to be guys that are scattered into both sides that have been a part of the national program. But like Sid is clearly the oldest player. Like Sid and Marchand are outliers in this tournament,
right? Especially
on Canada and the U.S. Like those are legacy players who have been around for a long time. Everything else is effectively new age.
So
like it's young and pace. And
there's one thing for you: legacy player Patrick Kane wasn't chosen for the U.S.
Yeah. But I don't think he can keep up anymore based on the way he's playing now.
Right. Yeah.
After the surgeries, and like you're right though. Patrick Kane would be a guy that I'm sure some people thought.
Well, when you talk Sid,
like a year ago, hey, maybe you got to have him on the team because of who he is.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think of U.S. legacy players that, when you talk about Marchand and Sid, who would be the U.S. legacy players that would at least you come to mind?
Yeah, Patrick Kane would be at the top of
Sure,
that
it'd
list.
be the top of my list. I'm
For sure.
missing somebody else, I'm sure. But
we could, I'm sure, come up with a number of guys. And
that's the interesting part is, listen, it's good talking about it like it is.
yeah,
It is.
we'll get to the games in a couple of months, I guess.
Yeah.
And again, this is really about laying the framework for what's going to happen next year at the Olympic Games.
Right.
Because 90% of the players on these rosters will be there next year.
Yeah.
And again, that speaks to the youth. I think you want to get younger players in there to give them a taste of it so that they're ready for the Olympic Games.
Right.
I think that's a part of the strategy as well. All right, we'll come back with our best bets brought to you by FanDuel. Tee up the Leaf game one more time. Leafs Preds tonight down at Scotiabank. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, best bets brought to you by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Anytime goal scorer tonight, Steven Stamkos.
Oh, yeah. That's your guy.
Steven Stamkos. And the Leafs win on the money line tonight. That parlay paying plus 589. That's a big
number.
plus money.
Yeah.
Stamkos on the board. Leafs win. Everyone's happy. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Live same-game parlays are now available for every NHL game on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly. 19 plus. Physically located in Ontario.
Here's something we can do for fun the rest of the week, too. If a team is allowed to pick up somebody who is not named, so like a German, you could pick up
Leon Draisaitl,
Stützle, Shesterkin, Vasilevsky. Like, you could pick up one
That'd be
player.
interesting. Who would be the one guy that's not in this tournament? You think Leon would be
It would
one?
be Draisaitl.
I think Draisaitl would be first. Well, I think goaltenders would be compelling,
Canada
man.
would-
I mean, Shesterkin. If you're Canadian, I'd take Shesterkin over Draisaitl because I need a number one.
Right.
Like, Draisaitl would put you over the top as well, but I think the goaltender is more glaring.
Yeah, there's probably an 8-pack of players that you could go, if you could choose one. Like
Oh, yeah.
Team Finland.
How about Pasternak or
Well, I was just gonna
Kucherov?
say, yeah, like Kucherov would be right there as well. Like, there'd be some goalies, but there'd be some high-end players. Is there any defenseman that's not in those 4? I guess not. Trying to think of.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Roman Josi.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Josi would be a guy that would make a team.
100%. Really good player.
Yeah, Swiss player. Yeah, Josi, we'll see him tonight.
Yeah, it's just interesting.
Yeah, no, you're right. Listen, you guys are coming around on my idea of mixing and matching here. Putting different players on different teams, different nationalities.
If we're going to have some fun with it, we might as well. Like, that's my whole thing is what could have been or what could you try or all of that type of stuff.
Yep, I hear you. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what comes of the reaction to this news because now, like, the Leafs are in action tonight. John Tavares, Morgan Riley, Chris Tanev. I'm sure you saw Berube's comments the other day, like so cut and dry, matter of fact.
Yeah.
Where he's like, oh, what do you say to the guys who make it and won't make it? Well, if they make it, congrats. If they don't, okay, go get ready for the next game. Like, it was just,
doesn't care.
He's like, I don't really care. He's like, go,
That's him.
whatever, do whatever you want. I'm worried about the Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
That's my priority.
That's
Like, basically, like, pick up your lip and, sorry, you didn't make it, but I don't care. You better be ready to play tonight.
Yeah.
I like that
I'll
attitude.
be yelling at you if you don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that approach.
Yeah.
Ryan Reeves returning tonight. Alex Nylander coming out of the lineup. I don't think that's a surprise. Reeves was going to play, and Nylander, I thought he had a good start, and then it just kind of faded for him a little bit, and he's not a guy that's going to be an everyday guy. Alex isn't going to play every night.
I think you got to get Reeves back into it too. Like miss 5 games and come back, get an opportunity to get right back on the horse and be physical. And
Absolutely.
do what he does best.
He'll be looking to inflict pain tonight.
Exactly.
You can bank on it. All right, Leafs Preds tonight. We look forward to that. Full breakdown tomorrow, Week 14 in the NFL. Big game tomorrow night, Packers-Lions. And see what's up with Juan Soto, where the Raptors are going. LeBron, can he get back into rhythm, man? LeBron's struggling out there in L.A.
Looks old. That's what it is.
That's the question. Is it just Father Time has finally caught up to this guy? I think it's potentially happening.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. Radio, TV, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.